Rise up!
This is the Rise Up See Red podcast, all about the Arizona Cardinals and the NFL, featuring insider and outsider perspectives. Enjoy the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. Now here are your hosts, Jess Root and Seth Cox.
Hello, Arizona Cardinals fans, and welcome to the latest edition of the Rise Up See Red podcast, the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. I'm your host, Jess Root from CardsWire.com, USA Today's NFL wire site that covers the Arizona Cardinals, for episode 718 with Seth Cox, my co-host from RevengeOfTheBirds.com, SB Nation's Arizona Cardinals site, and we are with our Cardinals-Seahawks reaction show. And what a laughable game, Seth. 44-22, and it wasn't even that close because they were down 35-0 it was halfway through the second quarter, and they were down by 5 freaking touchdowns. And the only reason it even got reasonably close is because the Seahawks, who are turnover prone, turned the ball over 3 different times.
You know, it was one of those games where it started bad and then just got laughably worse. And then you were just kind of like, who cares? And I did see a lot of people like, hey, they had some fight, look at what they did, to make it respectable at the end. I was like, I can tell where we're at in the fandom cycle right now of like moral victories, because we're just looking for things to try and because again, it was, hey, everything's going to be better now, right? Like they made the move at quarterback. Things were going to be better. There's no way it was going to be bad. And then it was the worst performance probably in 2 to 3 years.
Oh my gosh. It reminded me of overall, because they fell behind, but it was the same type of game as the Washington and Green Bay games last year.
Yeah. So, and so that's the thing is, people look at it and go, they're creating narratives to try to again, justify everything. And it's like, no, let's just, call a spade a spade. It was a terrible game. The team was ill prepared. The guy that was, supposed to be the cure-all for the offense,
You're nothing.
Well, and the things that Jess and I have been kind of railing on, like we did early in the season with the defense, especially in the fourth quarter. You tweeted about it a couple times. You and at your site and your coworker at your site wrote about it. It's an unsustainable way of playing, and it all kind of came crashing down in this game. It's one of those situations where you look at it and you go, this was not, I think the speed in which it happened was unexpected, but this was not an unexpected game in any way, shape, or form, because there were a lot of flaws, with what was happening, even when, it was supposed to be good. And again, I talked yesterday about this. People want to look at this and go, oh, well, you're just hating, or why are you blaming Brissett? I'm like, I've never once blamed Jacoby Brissett. I actually don't think it's the quarterback's fault at all. That's kind of been our stance the whole time, right? And so you look at it, and this week you just saw the flaws of the team overall. You saw a team that is poorly constructed, that doesn't really have depth, which is something we've talked about, right? Like they can't afford the injuries that they've been having, because it's, while it is year 3 of a rebuild, they basically started from scratch and had no talent. And so when they got the talent in, it basically made it where that talent was starting, and now now the next piece of that is depth, and
they built the depth only to have all of their talent get hurt.
Right,
and
exactly.
So the depth is gone.
And so that's that was the thing. And I think there were some, I think Johnny Venerable talked about it yesterday. There were some decisions that were made leaving players in a blowout that were interesting and hopefully not costly, right? And all of that leads to a lot of questions about the state of the team and the franchise.
Let's start to see if there was anything worth salvaging, any positives in this game. And I can point to, I think the one great positive is that, and he's just been consistent, is that Trey McBride continues to do what he's done for the last 2 seasons. And that is just produce. 9 catches for 127 yards and another touchdown. He's now got 6 touchdowns on the season, which, remember how we all worried about whether he would be able to move into the next stratosphere of tight ends. And that was always going to hinge on him finding the end zone. I always felt that last year was just anomalous, that there was no way someone who has the volume of receptions that he does would only have 2 touchdowns. And that's what we're seeing this year. He's got 6 touchdown catches already. That's, pacing for double digits, which would put him, he's pacing for 1,000 yards, 100 catches and double digit touchdowns. And you're going to start talking about him in the same breath as you do like George Kittle and Travis Kelce. And as they get older, he's going to carry the torch with Brock Bowers and Sam Laporta for those just elite tight ends. And he keeps doing it. And so that was good. He's healthy. He was productive. And then I liked that Amari DiMercato has really kind of bounced back from his blunder in week 5. And he continues to show just a kind of nice little, depth piece that you have, because he does the whole third down thing. He's really good at picking up blitz pickup. And then on top of that, he is explosive when he gets into open space. The rushing numbers that the Cardinals had at 129 on the game look way better because DiMercato ripped off a 55-yarder, and that was after he also had. So he had over 100 yards from scrimmage, and 89 of them came on 2 plays. He had the 55-yard run, and he had a 34-yard catch. And he just continues to be, aside from being the villain in week 5, he is a really nice piece on the team who just, aside from the one game, well, aside from 2, when the drop against San Francisco and the fumble, I'll argue with anyone to this who wants to, even though he was called to have a fumble, he crossed the plane before he let that ball go, and that was overturned on principle rather than actual video evidence, because that ball is still in his hand and he crosses the goal line. But I'll argue, I will talk till I'm blue in the face about that. Now, should he have come that close to do it? No, that's different. Since that's why it was overturned off principle to embarrass the Cardinals. I swear it was. But outside of that, I don't know if there was anything else positive other than the individual play of Amari DiMercato and Trey McBride. And maybe you could look at Jacoby Brissett's stat line and think that he was a positive, but it was 50% of his passes. He didn't have an interception. And so looking at the passing numbers, it's 258 yards and 2 touchdowns. You're like, oh, it's a pretty nice game, except for then you look deeper in there and you see what happened with the 2 strip sacks and defensive touchdowns. But did you find anything else positive or even palatable in that game?
I mean, I think you mentioned, McBride. That's always he's been a highlight this year. And that continued in this one. And then, I mean, I think you have to look at the fact that this game specifically, there was not a whole lot of good things, but Paris Johnson continues to be teetering on a top 5 left tackle in the NFL already, which is fun, right? Like that's a solid thing. After that, man, I was thinking about this too, Jess, because when you get down 28-0 in the first quarter, right? But 2 of the scores are on when the offense is on the field. You go, okay, well, like, is it that bad? Like, right? Like, and then you look at it and you just you go, yeah, it was that bad. Like,
it was that bad.
The craziest stat to me at one point was that at one point in the game, the Seahawks had ran, I think, 33 plays, and they were up 35-0. And I was just like, oh my God. I'm like, that's just such an absurd stat. Like, they've scored more points than they have plays they've run. Like, that's just such offensive plays they've run. Like, that's just such a absurd stat, and kind of like makes you go, yeah, there's really very little, if anything, positive to write home about yesterday.
Coming up next on the Rise of C-Red podcast by Star Charles talking a little bit. Let's talk about Jacoby Brissett, his play, the offense. Obviously won't be good because we already talked about that. That's coming next on Rise of C-Red. We're back on the Rise of C-Red podcast by Star Cardinals talk on the web, talking about the Cardinals 44-22 loss to the Seattle Seahawks in Seattle in Week 10. A game that they were the doors blasted out, and then they sort of coasted away. Now, Brissett didn't look terrible, but at the same time, and I'm going to ask you this: did Brissett look any different? Like, aside from getting hit, he got hit, but aside from the defensive touchdowns, did we see anything different from Brissett against Seattle than we saw in any of the other 3 games that he started? Because to me, it didn't look like he's been identical in every game.
Yeah, I mean, there were a couple things, right? So, like, the first thing that I looked at in this week that, kind of told a story or told, the story of what we saw was, he was not good in terms of pushing the ball vertical. And again, that's something that we've, that has been the rallying cry of why he's a better fit for this offense than Kyler Murray. And I don't think that that's inaccurate in that sense, right? Like, his strength is, holding onto the ball, hanging in the pocket, and delivering down the field. But you and I have, like, and we've beat this to death already. The way that it was going, it was just such an untenable situation. And like I said, yesterday it kind of came to a head. You had, he ended up going 5 for 18 on 10 plus yard, or sorry, 6 for 18 on 10 plus yard throws. And so you might go, oh, that's not terrible. Right. But again, before that, the rest of the season, he'd been much better. His completion percentage yesterday was miserable. His yards per attempt, was at the lowest it's been on the season. And so it became a situation where he's just not, and again, not Jacoby's fault, but like they were just not able to utilize his strengths at all because of the unrelenting pressure and now what the game plan is going to be moving forward, right? Like the game plan is just go get Jacoby. Like don't worry about anything else. Like
Who was it? It was Byron Murphy, the second-year defensive tackle, referred to referred to Brissett as a statue.
yeah,
He's
they
a
said,
statue.
well, no, he said he was a sitting duck. Like
Sitting duck. That's it. He was a sitting duck. I'm like, oh my gosh.
yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And so that's just the reality is like you look at these things, you look at how they unfold, and you just understand that this was a situation where the offense and the way that you attacked the offense was so different from the way that you attacked Kyler Murray that it took until, start number 4 to really dial in the best way to attack him. And we talked about it after the Cowboys game, right, Jess? I mean, I thought you and I, as always, have done a great job of being kind of the first to see things. And
the first to admit to them or
yeah,
or understand.
I think that's the best way to put it. Yeah, to admit to things like everybody, they beat the Cowboys, a great win, and you're like, I mean, it was a good win. But it was also the same type
the
of.
Cowboys mismanaged the game. They were a bad defense, and it was kind of everything coming to a head for both teams. So, but yeah, it was good, but it's not like because the Cardinals really didn't play any different than they had the past weeks.
Right. And so then you get this game and you look back and you mentioned it, like the last 3 games are kind of mirror images of each other, right? 330 yards against the Packers, 340 yards against the Cowboys, 335 yards against the Seahawks, 23 points against the Packers, 27 points against the Cowboys, 22 points against the Seahawks, 236 passing yards, 221, 206. Like, it's basically, just deja vu, right? And so, and so people look at it and they go, yeah, he's, he played fine. And you're like, he played fine in the sense of that he stayed in there and kept throwing and he kept going. But the reality is that at some point we've talked about this, right? Like you have to protect players from themselves too. And
the numbers are bad. We talked about it before the game and we detailed it. 13 sacks, 35 quarterback hits in the 3 games he'd started. That continued. He was sacked 5 times, was hit another 10, but all 5 sacks and 8 of the 10 hits came in the first half. Obviously, we know that 2 of the sacks resulted in fumbles that DeMarcus Lawrence took for touchdowns. So the raw numbers are in 4 starts. Jacoby Brissett has been sacked 18 times and hit 45 times. That, again, it's unsustainable. You cannot sustain any success when that is happening. And his sack rate, his sack rate right now, got to pull that up because it was Because he,
it's over 10% now. It's at 10.34%.
yeah, it's it's the highest it's been in his career. And that's including the 52 sacks he took in 2017 when he started 15 games for the Colts. He was sacked a league high 54 times. Yeah, and if we're going so he's averaging getting sacked more than 4 times a game. And if he's going to get sacked at that rate over the next 9 games, 8 games, 9 games, 8 games.
8 games, yeah.
So it's another 8 games. He gets sacked 4 times. That's 32 plus the 18. He will have been sacked 50 times in half a season. 50 times in half a season. That's crazy.
Well, and what's crazier, Jess, this is what's even crazier, is when you factor in sacks and yardage, he actually averages less yards per game than Kyler. Because, they take sacks out of your passing yards, blah, blah, blah. Like, they don't take him out of the cumulative yards, but they take him out of your, so he's averaging 186.3. So Kyler's 192.4. And so you're just like, again, like, I don't know, man. Like, I have no problem with Jacoby. I don't. And I think he's done a hell of a job as a backup in a tough situation. But I don't think a completion percentage of sub 61% is something that you want. I mean, think about this again, Jess. In 4 games, he's thrown 155 passes. Kyler, in a full extra game, has thrown 161 passes. Like, that's absurd that they basically were like, yeah, well, and it would be different if for most of those games, they had James Conner and Trey Benson, but even in the Tennessee game, right? Kyler threw the ball 31 times. And so it's wild to see how it's playing out. And I saw yesterday, like, people are like hyping up Marvin Harrison Jr. got, 13 targets. I'm like, wait, are 13
12 targets? Well, 13 if you include the 2-point conversion.
Right. So 13 targets in the game. And I'm like, wait, are 13 targets but like 6 catchable targets really that important? Like, that's like, I'm not trying to be rude, but like, what are we doing here? Like, why would it matter if he had 13 targets, but literally only 6 of them were catchable? That's, and there's little things that, like, that you look at, the success rate per play, right? Like, it's interesting that Kyler's having more success than Jacoby, but that's not to say that it's an indicator of anything. It's interesting that that's not the narrative, right? Like, the narrative is that the offense is just, humming. And it's like, okay. I mean, and again, you look at it, it was fun in the beginning, 312 passing yards. And then week 2, 236, week 3, 221, week 4, 206. Like those numbers go down each week. And I know that Jacoby's thrown for more yards. Don't get me wrong. I understand how it works, but the passing yardage includes the number of sack yardage. And those sack numbers are so insanely high at this point. You just went over it, 4.5 sacks per game. That's not a sustainable thing. And you and I talked about that. Like, it's crazy to think that looking at that and going, oh, that's okay, that fans are like, oh yeah, it's not a big deal. And you're like, wait, what? Like, why? Why? I mean, you mentioned it, and your numbers are slightly off. He's on pace for 54 sacks because it's 4.5 sacks per game.
Oh my gosh. He's on
50
pace for a half a season, have the most sacks he's had. And that's when he led the NFL in getting sacked, when he played a full season. God
right.
dang. Come on.
And so, you look at it, it's just one of those things, and it's interesting how it all all the goodwill can get carried over, right? Like, again, Marvin Harrison doesn't really do a whole lot yesterday, right? 3 catches for 33 yards on, technically 4 for 35 if you include, like you said, the extra point, but three catches on 12 targets, like a 25% catch rate. That's his lowest of the season. That was the second lowest amount of yards, or sorry, the third lowest amount of yards he's had this season. His 2 lowest yardage, or 2 of his 3 lowest yardage games, were with Jacoby.
Right. We talked with the narrative. Marv looks better with Jacoby. In his 4 games, there's 2 catches, 3 catches, and the only game he was good was Dallas.
Right. And so, you look at that. It's just, I don't know. It goes back to efficiency, right? Like, are you a fan of bulk numbers, bulk stats, like old school football stuff? Or are you more of a fan of like the efficiency of the game and how things are playing out? And right now, the reality is that it's obvious that fans prefer the bulk numbers. And I saw a meme the other day. It was funny. It said something to the effect of, Kyler Murray playing quarterback, and it's the like scared and sad meme. And then on the other side, it's looking out the window, and it's like losing with Jacoby Brissett at quarterback, and it's like happy smiling, and you're just like, it's like, I can respect that. Like, I do. Like, I respect it. If you're like, oh yeah, I don't care if they win or lose, as long as Kyler's not playing, I don't care. And I've had people straight up tell me that, like, oh, I don't care. I just don't like watching Kyler play. So I'd rather, I don't care. And it's like, that's a weird thing, but at least it's honest, right? Like, oh yeah, I don't care if they win or lose, as long as, as long as it's not Kyler that's playing. You're like, okay, I do respect that. I do.
There you go. That's it. Coming next on the Rise of Sierra podcast, Best Our Cardinals talking. Let's move on to talk about the defense. What did we learn from that? That's coming next on Rise of Sea Red. We're back on the Rise of Sea Red podcast, Best Our Cardinals talk on the web, talking about the defense. And my goodness, the defense was bad. I mean, we recall that they did a good job against Jackson Smith and Jigba for 1/2 of play in week 4, as he had no catches and no receiving yards. But in the second half, he caught 4 passes for 79 yards, had 2 critical receptions, one that set up the game-winning field goal. Then he comes out and, catches 4 passes for 80 yards and a touchdown almost immediately in the first quarter, in the first two possessions. He didn't reach 100 yards for the game, but
thank God.
But he had that touchdown that basically that kicked things off. And so the pass defense wasn't good. And you could say, well, they only gave up 100 and whatever passing yards. Well, that's because Sam Darnold only had to throw the ball 12 times the entire game. They got absolutely gashed by the run game. And here's the biggest, indictment on that, is that it didn't matter who it was, whether it was Ken Walker, Zach Charbonnet, or George Halani. Charbonnet had not been good this year. He's kind of a fantasy guy, because he likes to go in and hawk in steal those touchdowns at the goal line, but he was averaging under 3 yards a carry. And there was one point where he ripped off 30, 13, 9, and 9 yards. He finished with 83 yards on 14 carries, averaging just shy of 6 yards a carry. Ken Walker averaged 4.8. George Holani averaged 4.4. Rashid Shaheed averaged 10 on his carries. It was just bonkers that, this run defense offered nothing. And I mean, the Cardinals didn't have to, like the Seahawks didn't have to do much. Sam Darnold didn't do anything. Like half of his completions went to Sam Darnold. He had the monster catch and run, the 74 yards. The 67 yards came on one play to Cooper Kupp, and then he had a couple of dump offs. Elijah Arroyo with a 5-yard catch, Ken Walker with a 3-yard catch, Rashid Shaheed with a 3-yard catch. It's like this. There was so much yuck, and yeah, they got turnovers. They took the ball away 3 times, the 2 on the fumbles, but and Josh Sweat got himself another sack. He's up to 8 on the season, but you can't really look at the individual play of anyone and feel real good about it. Garrett Williams got toasted. Cody Simon
By the way,
wasn't great.
Is that not kind of what I said? That Garrett did not look right in that game against the Cowboys, and then he comes out and he just doesn't look healthy. Like, it's not that he's playing poorly; it just doesn't look like he has his legs back. But it might just be a case where they just don't have a choice because they're so shorthanded. It's like hey, you got to play through it. Like, we know what's going on. It is what it is. Like, we're not, but like, I mean, yeah, he was bad yesterday. And then you just feel bad for guys like Denzel Burke, who had been playing well in spot duty and in small roles, right? And had a great game against Dallas, played well in minimal snaps against Tennessee, had a decent game against Carolina. And then you look at yesterday. I mean, he was abysmal. And you're like, how are you abysmal on 15 coverage plays? But that was just the reality, right? Like, it's not on Denzel Burke. It's like, why are we putting these kids in those situations? And you genuinely just feel bad for Burke, right? Because he played his ass off the week before. Like I said, he had a great game. And then he comes back and has his worst game as a pro against it, in terms of just, I don't know, like that's a wild thing to me. And again, it's wild how bad the secondary grades were when they threw the ball 12 times, just like
12 times. Oh my gosh.
How is that even possible?
No, and to make things worse, Darius Robinson got hurt, Walter Nolan got hurt.
Okay.
And so it's piling on. Like, they're losing, their depth is getting tested, and then their depth is getting hurt, and we're almost to the point where we're like, well, let's pack it in. Like, if this feels like it's going in the way of 2022, and then somebody that, like in 2022 when Kyler tore his ACL, like that's the only thing that you couldn't have happen ended up happening, and then set them like that. But yeah, it kind of feels like things are unraveling, and that the Dallas game was just a small reprieve, basically. But we kind of knew this, especially them being banged up. We expected this game to be kind of the regression game for everyone involved. They only had one hit on Darnold. Granted, he barely, they did have a handful of tackles for loss, but there just wasn't. The defense wasn't good. They were clearly missing Mac Wilson, Max Melton, and Will Johnson, and they just didn't have any answers for Seattle. And it's once you lose, you get down 7-0, and then the defensive touchdown, and then you give up, and when it's 21-0 by the end of the first quarter, there's almost never any coming back from that. And so the fact that the Cardinals kind of got a little bit involved was good to see, but also as noted by the fact that they didn't get a sack in the second half, and they only hit Jacoby twice, is evidence that the Seahawks changed what they were doing defensively. They just started doing the coasting defensively. And so, yeah, they didn't do well against the pass the limited amount of times. They didn't do well against the run. They didn't rush. They didn't create pressure. There was almost nothing redeemable about this game in general, other than defensively, other than you get another sack for Josh Sweat. Really, he's got 8 sacks. It looks like he's gonna end up with double digit, and that addition's gonna look good. Calais Campbell's playing okay, but yeah, there's nothing. Anything else to add?
No, I mean, let's just hope that, especially for the young guys, it's not too much of a loss, because those guys both need to be on the field and playing.
Yeah. So next on the Rise of Seaward podcast, Mr. Cardinals Talk, let's talk about the coaching situation. Is Jonathan Gannon coaching for his job? That's coming up next on Rise of Seaward. We're back on the Rise of Seaward podcast, Mr. Cardinals Talk on the web. We're back talking about where the Cardinals are. It felt like the 5-game losing streak, we're starting to think, is Gannon going to be gone? Is he the right coach for this staff? Is he a good coach? And after a loss like that, we're left to wonder, especially as he seems to say, "Oh, I didn't do a good enough job. I didn't prepare them well enough." He keeps falling on the sword. Have we reached the point where he's on the hot seat, or he's coaching for his job, like Mike McDaniel sort of is, or do you think his spot is still pretty secure?
I think he's fine this year. Like, I would be shocked to see anything change this year. I think that they've been able to have the media on their side about the ills of this team, and that that they were able to get the right guy in there, while Kyler gets healthy. And so that's where I'm at with this. Now, that doesn't mean that it won't happen. 2-3 more games like that. I mean, you think about it, just some of the games they have left, we could see another one of those, right? You could see that.
I mean, both games against the Rams, Tampa. Now Joe Burrow is big into practice, so he's lining up to be able to play against the Cardinals. So
and that division's a dumpster fire. That that Cincinnati game, week 17, December 28th in Cincinnati, could mean something for Cincinnati. So to your point, like, yeah, Burrow plays. Like, those are all things that you look at and you go, hopefully by then Trey Benson's back, right? And the running game starts to peek its head out again, and you see a little more from the running game. But you and I, and we were talking about in the group text today, if they win 3 more games and they get to 6-11, and they can kind of pass the buck on the early season stuff, like, oh, we had that 5-game losing streak and our quarterback got hurt, but he wasn't the guy, we needed to move on from him anyways. And so we got the right guy in there the back half of the season, and you saw the improvements, and you go 6-11, you might be able to spin that and sell it, right? If you go 4-13 and you have 2, maybe 3 more games like that, like yesterday, You're going to have to do a whole lot of smoothing out on why Jonathan Gannon deserves to come back. The other issue is this, Jess, and you and I have been talking about this a little bit. I know he's got 2 years left on the deal, but
it's 1 year plus an option, so
right.
He doesn't have to necessarily be a lame duck coach next year.
But it's also very lame duck to only have 1 year left, like one additional year, right, on your contract. Like that's just not something you see happen with coaches, and then them get to make drastic decisions like drafting a quarterback or things of that nature. So that begets the question of early in August, right? Mike Jurecki sent out some wild innocuous tweet of like, we'll be the starter next year. And that was after one of the preseason games of Jacoby. And you and I were like, what? But like, is that really the plan, Jess? And if it was the plan coming into this year, so that meant that they knew that they were going away from Kyler from the beginning, right? Like they knew it. And if that's the plan, is it better that Jacoby's playing or worse? Because 1-3 and some nice statistics, but not a whole lot on the field to show for it. Is that, is that what we're going to sell going into next year? Because it feels like if you go into year 4 of Jonathan Gannon and with Jacoby Brissett, it basically feels like you're waving the white flag before the season even starts, right?
It feels too much. It feels too much like the 90s.
Right. Like
this is the Jay Schrader, Steve Berline, Chris Chandler, Dave Craig, Boomer Esiason,
Hank Graham, right? Like,
oh my gosh.
Yeah. That's when I was in the stadium every week. I was in the stadium in 93. Who was 90? Yeah, Steve Berline, like you said, right? 94. They go 8-8 under Buddy Ryan, and it was Berline and, like you said, Jay Schroeder, right? And that's, that got people hyped for some reason. Then you have the Dave Craig year with Stoney Case. Remember Stoney Case?
Oh my gosh, I remember all the names, and I am sad that I do.
And then you had 97, and that was they had Jake Plummer and everybody.
Jake Plummer's gonna save us, and then he did for a year.
Yeah, well, and remember they cheered when Kent Graham went down.
Oh yeah,
and so like you look at those things and you just go, is this, like you said, is that where? That's what coming in with Jacoby feels like, right? Like. And that's not a shot at Jacoby. That's just who he's been throughout his career. Like he's a journeyman. He's a journeyman, and that's okay. Like
let's not remember that he was signed to Washington to compete with Sam Howell and couldn't beat out Sam Howell. And then he was signed by New England to bridge the gap to Drake May, and Drake May played several weeks earlier than people wanted him to because Jacoby wasn't good. And I'll say that Jacoby's been fine this year.
He's been fantastic in what a backup quarterback should do.
He's not making a difference with wins and losses. And he won't, sadly. Except this week. It's maybe this week, because San Francisco they have nobody on defense left. But we're going to talk about that later this week. Like they might maybe upset the 49ers this week, but I think that's about all I give them.
But by the way, can we just mention on that before, because the line opened at Cardinals +3. What kind of wild disrespect is it that a home game, your 3-point dogs against a team that was blown out equally to you the week before, and that you are incredibly banged up, even more so than the Cardinals. And statistically, until yesterday, you were virtually the same team, right? So yeah, it's kind of wild that they're road favorites, but it also really makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah, like why would you favor the Cardinals in any game? But yeah. So yeah, it's gonna be fun. I actually I don't think it's gonna be fun. I don't think it's gonna be fun to watch this team the rest of the year. Um this team, remember that where this team was supposed to be, and they went from being just a dumpster fire in 2022. Gannon led them to be, they were a good bad team. They were a good bad team. They won 4 games, but they were competitive. Last year, they were perfectly mid. Perfectly mid. But then they just needed a couple things. They needed, their defense was bad, the offense was good. They needed to shore up the defense, and then they could compete this year. And what's happened? Ugh. Oh my gosh, the offense looked terrible. The defense held itself up, but ultimately has been bad too. And so we're left to there's not even consolation prizes at this point. Like, because yeah, so all the vibes are gone, except people still like the Jacoby Brissett vibe. So there's that at least. Some people are happy.
Yeah, right.
I guess it's less frustrating to lose with Jacoby than it is with Kyler. Maybe that's it. That if you're going to lose anyway, you might as well do it with a likable journeyman as opposed to your unlikable star.
Yeah, right.
But well, that'll wrap this edition of the Rise Up Series podcast of the Best Hour Cardinals Talk on the Web. That'll wrap this up. We will be back again later this week to preview Cardinals 49ers, and I will try and nail down a guest for the rest of the week, whether that's Kyle Madsen or whether that is Kyle Posey. One of the Kyles will be on. That's Seth Cox. I'm Jess Root. Thanks for listening as always. We'll be back again soon.
Thanks for listening to the latest edition of the Rise Up, See Red podcast. Listen to previous episodes and subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, Audioboom, or many other podcast platforms so shows are delivered directly to your mobile device. Please give the show a 5-star rating and always support the sponsors who support the show. We'll be back soon for the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. Rise up, Red Sea, be Red, See Red, and of course, Rise Up, See Red.